We stand at the edge of silence. Stone towers rise before us, weathered by centuries, kissed by wind and rain. They do not speak, yet their silence is heavy. It is the silence of secrets, the silence of memory. Here lies a temple, a structure born of stone, of sweat, of dreams, and yet even now it refuses to reveal its truths. The temple is not unique in its existence. Across the world, temples rise from jungles, deserts, mountains, and plains. They are markers of devotion, of ambition, of human longing. But this one stands apart. For while many temples proudly display their inscriptions, their stories etched into walls, their gods carved into statues, this temple resists. Its walls whisper, but they never tell. Its stones hint, but they never explain. We are left instead with mystery. Imagine the people who stood here long ago. Imagine their hands pressing stone into place, their feet worn by the climb to its sacred heights. Imagine voices rising in chants, drifting into the open sky. And yet, though their echoes once filled this space, time has swallowed them whole. We, the wanderers of the present, arrive centuries too late. We see only fragments, broken stairways, empty chambers, columns that point like fingers toward the heavens. Who built it? Why here? Why in this form, in this shape, in this hidden place? The answers are buried, scattered, forgotten, or perhaps deliberately concealed. For as long as there have been temples, there have been mysteries. Temples are built not just to honor gods, but to shape memory, to control time, to hold power in stone. And sometimes they are built not for us to understand, but for us to wonder. The temple before us is wrapped in that wonder. It does not reveal. It resists. And so tonight we walk slowly through its story, not in search of answers, but in search of the questions that remain. We begin not with stone, but with silence. Not with walls, but with the world that surrounded them. The sun is low. The air is heavy. Shadows stretch across the land where once pilgrims walked, their footsteps worn into earth now reclaimed by moss and roots. The temple does not speak, but the land remembers. The jungle, the desert, the sky, they remember what the stone will not tell. Our story begins here, in the hush of ancient ground. The temple rises like a dream from the soil. To approach it is to step out of time, to move from the present into the slow rhythm of centuries. Its stones are cool, even under the sun. Its chambers are dark, even in daylight. It is a place where the boundary between past and present thins, where we can almost hear the heartbeat of those who came before. We will never know everything. Perhaps we are not meant to, but still we listen. Still we walk. Still we wonder. And in the stillness, we find something unexpected. Not frustration, but peace. For the temple teaches us that not all stories must be solved. Some may remain mysteries, and in that mystery lies beauty. Tonight we will journey together through this temple and its shadows. We will imagine the world around it, the lives that filled it, the struggles that shaped it. We will follow the slow rhythm of time, moving carefully through centuries. The temple refuses to reveal its secrets, but in its silence, we may hear something else, something older, something quieter, something that belongs not just to them, but to all of us. The night falls. The stars rise. The temple stands, and so we begin. We step back from the stones, and for a moment, we let the temple rest in silence. To understand its story, we must first understand the world that held it. The temple does not float in emptiness. It is rooted in earth, cradled by sky, surrounded by a landscape that shaped its builders' every choice. And so, before we walk through the halls of stone, we walk through the world around them. The air here is thick with life. Dawn rises slowly, spilling golden light across hills draped in green. The first birds stir, their calls echoing like delicate chimes in the canopy. Mist clings to the trees, softening their outlines, as though the land itself is still half asleep. This is a world of rhythms. The rhythm of rain, falling heavy in certain seasons, drenching soil until roots drink deep. The rhythm of wind, sweeping across valleys, bending grass in waves like the breath of the earth itself. The rhythm of stars, returning night after night, guiding travelers and dreamers alike. In such a place, time feels different. The people who built the temple did not measure hours with the precision of our clocks. They felt time in the swell of rivers, in the growth of crops, in the migrations of animals. They listened to the sky, the soil, the seasons. Time was not separate from the land. It was the land. And so, their temple rose not as an intrusion, but as an echo of nature. Its stones were drawn from quarries that lay in silence for millennia, waiting. Its pillars were aligned with the path of the sun, the tilt of the stars, the pull of the horizon. When we look at its placement, we see more than architecture. We see dialogue, a conversation between humans and the world around them. Close your eyes and imagine walking here centuries ago. The forest stretches endlessly, alive with sound. Cicadism. Branches creak. A monkey leaps from one tree to another, vanishing into leaves that shimmer with morning dew. In the distance, a river coils through the valley, its surface glowing silver beneath the first touch of sun. The temple even then would have seemed both part of this world and apart from it. Rising from the earth like a mountain sculpted by human hands, it was visible across great distances, a silent landmark in a sea of green. To reach it, pilgrims may have walked for days, their feet brushing through tall grass, their voices murmuring in prayer, their bodies weary yet drawn onward by the promise of arrival. Along the way, they would have known the world not as scenery, but as companion. The earth beneath them was not passive ground, it was living presence. The trees were guardians, the rivers were teachers, the sky itself was sacred text, read not with eyes, but with spirit. And when they arrived at the temple, they arrived not just at a structure, but at a meeting place between human and world. The temple stands where it does for reasons we cannot fully know, but perhaps we can sense them. Perhaps the land here carried a certain weight, a certain quietness. Perhaps the hill or plateau on which it rests gave a vantage point, an opening to the horizon where the sun's first light touched stone. Perhaps rivers converged nearby, their waters sustaining life. In ancient times, a temple was never simply placed. It was chosen, aligned, rooted in a place where the seen and unseen intertwined. Even now, as we stand before it, we feel that harmony. The walls echo the cliffs. The stairs mirror the slope of the land. The layout itself reflects the paths of stars that once filled the sky. The builders were not only masons, they were listeners. They listened to the land, and in stone they answered. The seasons turned as they always do. Summer brought heat that pressed upon skin like a heavy cloak. Crops grew tall, their roots clutching the damp soil, their leaves shimmering under the sun. Thunderclouds built upon the horizon, their bellies dark, their voices deep. Lightning split the sky, and rains followed, drumming on leaves, filling rivers until they swelled with life. Autumn brought a gentler air, the forests alive with the rustle of drying leaves. Hunters moved quietly, their steps muffled on soft ground, their eyes sharp against the fading light. Winter came not with ice, but with stillness. Nights lengthened. Stars grew sharper. Fires burned longer in the villages, smoke curling into the cool sky. The temple, too, seemed quieter then, its stones cold, its chambers hushed. And then came spring, life bursting forth once more. Birds weaving nests, flowers opening in a sudden, unstoppable rush, rivers cleansing themselves with snowmelt from distant peaks. Through all these changes, the temple endured, its stones patient, its silence unbroken. The animals, too, were part of this world. Deer moved in herds across the plains, their hooves soft against the earth. Jaguars prowled the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly in moonlight. Birds of brilliant color flitted from branch to branch, their wings scattering drops of rain as they moved. To the people, these creatures were more than animals. They were symbols, messengers, embodiments of forces greater than themselves. A bird might not just be a bird, it might be the voice of the sky. A jaguar might not just be a predator, it might be the spirit of power itself. A riverfish might not just be food, it might be a gift from the underworld, drawn into the light. And so the temple rose among them not as fortress against nature, but as bridge to it. At night the world transformed, the jungle, the valley, the mountains, everything hushed, save for the chorus of insects and the call of owls. Above, the sky unfolded in vast silence. Stars shimmered endless, each one a story, each one a marker of time. The builders would have known these constellations like old friends. They would have read them as guides, as calendars, as reminders that human life is but a brief flicker in a much larger design. And perhaps, in aligning their temple with these stars, They sought to capture that design in stone, to root eternity into the earth itself. The world around the temple was not backdrop. It was not stage scenery for human drama. It was participant. It was co-creator. The rains carved the valleys that held the rivers that fed the people that built the temple. The forests provided the wood that raised scaffolds. The quarries yielded the stones that became walls. The sky gave the calendar. The sun gave the rhythm. The temple is, in a sense, not separate from the land. It is the land, shaped, stacked, aligned, and transformed into meaning. And so, before we step into its corridors, before we try to read the silence of its chambers, we must first bow to the world that shaped it. The temple is not only the work of human hands, it is the work of rivers, of forests, of stars, of soil. To understand it, we must understand them. The builders were not apart from their world. They were of it, and so are we. The dawn rises higher, the mist begins to lift, the birds call louder, and the river glitters once more. The temple waits, silent, unyielding. But now, as we stand before it, we know more than we did. We know the world it belongs to, the breathing earth, the endless sky, the turning seasons, the animals, the rivers, the stars. The temple may refuse to reveal its secrets, but the land around it whispers constantly, and in those whispers, we begin to listen. Every structure, no matter how vast, begins with a single decision, a single stone, a single hand placing it. The temple we now gaze upon, grand, weathered, silent, was once nothing more than an idea, a vision that lived in the minds of people who walked this earth long before us. We will never know their names. We will never hear their voices, but we can imagine the first moment, the spark that set the temple's creation into motion. Perhaps it began with the sky. For as long as humans have looked upward, we have sought patterns. The movement of the sun, the slow dance of the moon, the return of the stars. These patterns guided planting, hunting, traveling. They told of time passing, of cycles eternal, and perhaps one night, a group gathered beneath the stars, watching as they wheeled overhead. Perhaps they felt a longing to fix what was fleeting, to give permanence to the rhythm of the heavens, to anchor eternity into stone. In that longing, the temple was born, or perhaps it began with the earth. Imagine a sacred hill, a plateau, a rise of land where the horizon stretched in every direction. For generations, the people might have visited this place, not yet as builders, but as worshippers, offering gifts of food, of stone, of song, leaving behind tokens for unseen powers. In time, their devotion deepened. The hill was not enough. The earth itself called for something greater. And so, stone by stone, the temple began to rise. The origins are hidden, but one truth remains. No temple is ever built suddenly. It begins slowly, quietly. First steps. First stones. We can imagine the first builders arriving at the site, carrying tools made of stone, wood, and bone. Their hands calloused, their bodies lean. Around them, the forest hummed. The air was alive with insects, with bird calls, with the distant rush of a river. They began to clear the ground, cutting back trees, leveling the earth, marking the shape of what would come. At first, it may have seemed modest, a platform, perhaps, or a circle of stones. But from that first outline, something larger grew. Generation after generation, the vision expanded until the temple reached the scale we see today. There is something deeply human in this process. The builders knew they would never see it complete. The temple was too vast, too ambitious to be finished in a single lifetime. And yet they began. They carried stones, each one heavy, each one shaped with patience. They placed them carefully, aligning them not just with the land, but with the stars. They worked not for themselves alone, but for their children, their grandchildren, their descendants yet unborn. In this way, the temple is not just stone, it is time itself, stacked layer upon layer, generation upon generation. Picture the early days. A group of families gathered nearby, their huts clustered close to the site, fires burning at night, children running barefoot through the dust, elders speaking softly of why the work mattered. By day, the people labored. Some shaped stone, chipping and smoothing with tools that rang against the rock. Others hauled logs to use as rollers, pulling great blocks inch by inch across the earth. Still others carried food, fetched water, sang songs to steady weary hands. The work was not only physical, it was spiritual. Each stone was placed with reverence. Each alignment was chosen with care. In their minds, they were not simply building a structure. They were shaping a bridge between human and divine. The first steps of the temple were not only steps of stone, they were steps of belief. Belief that the temple would matter. Belief that their effort would echo across time. Belief that the unseen powers of sky and earth would honor what they created. And so, though we cannot know their names, we know their faith. It lingers in every stone, every stair, every chamber. As the temple grew, so did its meaning. What began as a simple platform may have become a stage for rituals. Fires lit in the night, priests raising offerings toward the stars, drums echoing through the dark, their rhythm merging with the heartbeat of the earth. In time, those rituals may have drawn others. Pilgrims traveling from distant villages, traders carrying goods along winding paths. The temple becoming not only a place of worship, but a place of gathering, of exchange, of memory. The first steps became foundations, not only of stone, but of culture. There is something haunting in the thought that all of this began with ordinary gestures, a hand lifting a stone, a voice chanting a prayer, a fire lit against the night. Tiny acts, repeated countless times, until they became something vast. And isn't that the way of history? We imagine it as sudden, dramatic, filled with kings and battles and revelations. But more often, it unfolds slowly, quietly, through the hands of people whose names are forgotten, but whose work endures. The temple is their echo, their whisper across time. When we walk its stairways today, we walk the same paths they once carved. When we stand in its chambers, we stand where their voices once rose in prayer. When we touch its stones, we touch the very same surfaces that their hands shaped. Smoothed, lifted. The origins may be hidden, but the presence remains. Perhaps the most mysterious truth of all is this. The builders may never have intended for us to understand. They built not for us, but for themselves. For their gods, their ancestors, their children. Their meaning was their own, and in the centuries that have passed, much of it has dissolved into silence. And yet perhaps that is fitting. Perhaps the temple's refusal to reveal its secrets is its final lesson. For what we cannot know, we can still feel. What we cannot explain, we can still honor. The origins of the temple are lost, but the first steps remain. The first spark of vision, the first hand to lift a stone, the first fire lit upon sacred ground. From those beginnings, the temple rose, slowly, patiently, like the growth of a mountain. And though centuries have passed, we can still sense that beginning, still feel the heartbeat of those first steps, still walk alongside them in our imagination. The temple refuses to reveal its secrets, but its silence tells us this: everything grand begins small. Every enduring mystery begins with a first step, and in those first steps, the story of the temple and the story of humanity itself was set into motion. The night deepens. The temple looms, its stones glowing faintly beneath the stars. We have seen the world around it. We have walked through its beginnings, and now to truly know it, we must step into the flow of daily life, into the rhythm of existence that once surrounded these silent stones. The temple, for all its mystery, did not stand alone. Around it, life unfolded in steady rhythms, not the life of kings and battles, but the quiet, enduring life of ordinary people, those whose hands shaped the stones, whose voices echoed in the ceremonies, whose footsteps wore the paths that still linger faintly in the soil. If we wish to understand the temple, we must pause and walk alongside them. Dawn comes softly. The first light slips over the horizon, spilling across huts of thatch and clay. The village stirs slowly. Smoke curls upward from early fires, their sparks vanishing into the pale sky. Chickens move restlessly in the dust. Children rub their eyes, their hair tangled from sleep. The air is cool, but already heavy with the promise of heat. Men and women rise quietly, their movements practiced, unhurried. They have done this countless mornings before. Some prepare to walk to the fields, carrying tools of wood and stone, their bodies lean from labor. Others tend to animals, tying ropes, carrying water, scattering feed. The older children help, learning by watching, their hands clumsy but eager. The day has begun. Life here is not hurried. It follows the rhythm of necessity. The sun climbs higher, and with it comes the work. In the fields, maize grows tall, its leaves rustling softly in the wind. Beans climb wooden stakes, curling upward in slow spirals. Squash spreads low to the ground, its broad leaves shading the soil. Together they form the trinity of crops that sustain life, the three sisters, feeding not only the body, but the community itself. Men and women bend to tend them. Sweat gathers on their brows. They speak little, their hands busy with pulling weeds, checking roots, watching for insects. Around them the earth hums with life, bees moving from flower to flower, lizards slipping through the undergrowth, birds wheeling overhead. The work is steady, repetitive, but not joyless. It is life, and life itself is sacred. Closer to the temple, others carry water from the river. Clay jars balanced on hips, they walk slowly, carefully, their footsteps deliberate. Water is heavy, yet essential. It nourishes crops, cools the body, cleanses the spirit. Children gather sticks for firewood. Their laughter rises, chasing one another through the dust, though even their play is useful. By evening, their bundles will feed the flames that cook the family's meal. The elders remain near the village center, seated on mats of woven reeds. Their voices are low, telling stories, passing down knowledge. They watch the younger ones, guiding with a glance, a word, a gesture. To live long enough to teach is itself a gift, and their presence is honored. And then there are the temple workers. Every day, a small group climbs the steps to sweep the chambers, to tend the fires of incense, to prepare the spaces where rituals will unfold. Their work is quiet, reverent. They move slowly, as though each gesture itself is a prayer. Sometimes a priest or priestess appears. Clad in garments of bright dye, their hair adorned with feathers, they walk the temple's halls with deliberate grace. Their voices rise in chants, their words carried outward on the breeze. Few understand every phrase, but all feel the weight of their sound. The temple is not a place of daily bustle. It is a place of rhythm, smoke rising, feet climbing, voices chanting. Each day, a small echo of eternity. Midday arrives. The sun stands high, its heat pressing heavy upon the land. Work slows, tools are set aside. People retreat to shade, resting beneath trees, in the coolness of their huts, or in the shadow of the temple itself. Meals are shared, simple but sustaining. Tortillas of maize, ground on heavy stones and cooked over fire. Beans boiled until soft. Squash roasted, its flesh sweet. Perhaps a piece of fruit, a pepper, a handful of herbs gathered from the fields. They eat together, not hurriedly. Meals are not only for hunger, but for pause. A time to sit, to speak, to breathe. Children doze, their heads against their mother's arms. The air is thick, still shimmering with heat. Even the animals are quiet, resting in the shade. It is a moment of peace, carved into the center of the day. When the sun begins to lower, work resumes. Fields are tended once more. Nets are cast into rivers, drawn up with fish that shimmer like silver in the fading light. Hunters move quietly along forest paths, their eyes sharp, their ears tuned to the faintest sound. The temple, too, awakens again. Fires are lit at its corners, smoke curling upward in steady streams. Drums sound slow and deep, their rhythm echoing through the hills. People begin to gather, carrying offerings of food, of flowers, of carved figurines. The evening rituals are not always grand. Sometimes they are simple, a prayer whispered, a gift left, a gesture of gratitude. But they are constant. The temple breathes in rhythm with the people, its silence broken each night by voices rising into darkness. Night descends. The air cools. Stars unfold one by one until the sky is thick with their endless shimmer. Families gather around fires. Sparks rise into the night, drifting like tiny stars of their own. Stories are told, of gods and ancestors, of animals that once spoke, of heroes who journeyed into other worlds. Children listen with wide eyes, their imaginations painting pictures in the firelight. Drums echo faintly from the temple. The chants of priests float across the village. Sometimes the sound is steady, soothing, like the lull of waves. Other times it rises sharply, carrying into the night like a cry to the heavens. But even as ritual continues, life slows. One by one fires burn lower. One by one voices fall quiet, until at last the village sleeps beneath the stars. The temple remains, watchful, its stones cool beneath the moon. This was daily life, not dramatic, not filled with revelations, but steady, rhythmic, enduring. Morning, work, midday rest, evening rituals, night fires, sleep, A cycle repeated not for days but for centuries, and in that cycle, meaning was carried forward. Children grew into adults, who grew into elders, who told the same stories to the next children, who then carried them onward. Crops grew, were harvested, and planted again. Fires were lit, extinguished, and lit again. The temple stood, watching it all. Patient, silent, enduring. For us, daily life may seem ordinary, unremarkable. But here, in the shadow of the temple, even the ordinary was sacred. To plant was not just survival, it was devotion. To cook was not just nourishment, it was offering. To rest was not just pause, it was alignment with the rhythms of the world. Every gesture was part of the larger cycle, and the temple stood at its center, gathering the echoes of countless lives into its silence. Even now, when we stand among its stones, we can almost feel those rhythms. We imagine the footsteps worn into stairs, the smoke that once clung to its walls, the voices that rose in song, the silence of sleep beneath the stars. The temple refuses to reveal its secrets. But in the quiet, we glimpse the lives that gave it meaning. The night deepens again. The stars watch from above. We have walked through their days. We have seen their rhythms, their work, their rest. But to understand further, we must look beyond the individual. Beyond the single family, the single meal, the single prayer. For the temple was not only about daily life, it was about life together, about bonds, families, and the invisible ties of society. The temple did not rise from the hands of one person alone. It rose from many, families, neighbors, entire communities bound together in effort and belief. And so, to understand the temple, we must look at the invisible threads that tied these people to one another. For no stone could be lifted without cooperation. No ritual could echo without voices joined in chorus. No life could be lived in isolation. At the heart of everything was the family, a hut of thatch and clay, a fire burning low in the center. Children curled in sleep, their breathing steady. Parents whispering quietly in the dark, their words blending with the crackle of embers. Family was not simply blood, it was survival. Together they tended crops, fetched water, cooked meals, raised children. Alone, a person could not endure. But together, they could. Children learned not through instruction, but through presence. They followed their parents to the fields, watched their elders shape stone, listened to their grandparents tell stories. Slowly, day by day, the knowledge of countless generations passed into their hands, and when the time came, they would marry, weaving their thread into another family, strengthening the web that held the village together. Beyond the family was the household. Clusters of huts built close together, forming small neighborhoods. Here, tasks were shared. One family might lend tools to another. One might share food when crops failed. Together they celebrated births, mourned deaths, built homes, repaired walls. There was little separation between private and communal life. To live here was to live in view of others. Songs, laughter, arguments, even silences, all were part of the village's soundscape, and above the household was the community. Dozens of families bound together not only by need, but by shared belief. The temple was their center. Here they gathered for festivals. Here they brought their offerings. Here they stood shoulder to shoulder, faces lifted toward the sky as smoke from incense curled upward. The temple was more than stone. It was memory, a gathering place where the collective self of the people was made visible. We might wonder, who decided? Who gave direction to such a community? Leadership was likely not a throne, but a mantle, worn by those chosen for their wisdom, their courage, their connection to the divine. Elders whose words carried weight, priests whose chants carried the voices of the gods. Decisions were not made in solitude, but in circle. Discussions around fires, debates in open courtyards. Agreements shaped slowly, like clay in patient hands. And once decided, the community acted as one. If the temple needed stones, all lifted. If the fields needed tending, all bent to the soil. If the village faced drought, all endured together. Rituals, too, bound them. On festival days, the community became a single body. Drums echoed. Fires roared. The scent of roasted maize and burning incense filled the air. People painted their faces, adorned themselves with feathers, beads, and woven cloth dyed in vibrant colors. Children laughed, darting between legs. Elders swayed gently to the rhythm of drums. As the priest spoke, the crowd fell silent. Together they listened. Together they offered. Together they felt themselves part of something greater, threads woven into a vast tapestry, their lives bound not only to each other, but to forces beyond sight. These moments reminded them that they were not alone, that their small daily labors, their joys and struggles, were part of a larger whole. Even in times of quiet, society wove itself into the fabric of life. Neighbors helping neighbors build a roof. Mothers gathering to grind maize, their voices rising in song. Fathers teaching sons to weave nets, to shape tools, to read the sky. Grandmothers teaching daughters the secrets of herbs, of weaving, of childbirth. Every bond was practical. Every bond was sacred. The temple stood as the silent witness of these ties. Its stones absorbed the laughter, the prayers, the songs. Its stairways bore the footsteps of countless families climbing together. Yet, as in all human life, bonds were not only harmony. They could fray, they could strain. Arguments flared over land, over food, over the proper way to honor the gods. Rivalries grew between families. Jealousies simmered, sometimes quietly, sometimes sharply, but even conflict had its place. Disputes were brought before elders, who mediated with patience. Offerings were made at the temple to restore balance. Rituals of reconciliation were performed, reminding all that unity was stronger than division. The temple's silence absorbed even these tensions. And in time, conflicts passed, leaving the community whole again. What held them together was not law written in stone, but memory written in hearts. Every child knew the stories of their ancestors, how they came to this land, how they first planted maize, how they built the first altar, how the temple began to rise. These stories were repeated endlessly, so that no one forgot. They were not mere tales, they were identity. To forget them would be to lose oneself. The temple, standing tall, gave those stories a body. It was the visible proof of their past, the anchor of their present, the hope of their future. As we walk its stones now, we see only walls and stairs. But in its time, it was filled with people, children playing at its base, their laughter echoing. Mothers carrying infants up its steps, whispering blessings. Fathers teaching sons to bow, to pray, to honor. Priests chanting in unison, their voices rising like wind through the trees. Every bond, every relationship was drawn into its presence. The temple was not separate from society. It was society, shaped into stone. And so, though it refuses to reveal its secrets, it reveals this. It was not the work of one person, or even of a few. It was the work of many, of families bound together, of neighbors helping neighbors, of a community whose unity gave rise to stone that still stands centuries later. The night sky stretches above us, vast and endless. The stars shimmer, each one a reminder of connection. Below, the temple stands silent, but we feel the bonds it once held. Families, villages, a people who lived, who loved, who quarreled, who forgave. They are gone, but their unity endures, in stone and silence. In mystery, the temple refuses to reveal its secrets. But in the stillness, we see the society that built it. A society where life was never lived alone. A society where every bond was sacred. A society that found its reflection in stone. We have seen their daily rhythms. We have felt their bonds, but life was never without difficulty. And so, in the next step of our journey, we must look at their struggles, the challenges that shaped them, the storms that tested their strength, the shadows that lingered even in the glow of firelight. Every life, no matter how calm its rhythm, moves beneath the shadow of struggle. The people who gathered around the temple were no different. To live was to endure was to adapt. And always the temple stood, bearing silent witness to every challenge. The land itself was generous, yet demanding. The soil could yield maize, beans, and squash, but only when the rains came. And the rains were never certain. Seasons of abundance filled granaries with baskets of grain. Families ate well, fires burned warm, and festival days were filled with joy. But sometimes the clouds refused to gather. The sky hardened into an unbroken blue. The earth cracked, dry and aching. Crops withered, waterholes shrank. Children asked for food their parents could not provide. In those times, the community turned to the temple. They climbed its steps, carrying offerings, praying for rain. Priests raised their arms to the heavens, their chants drifting into the sky like smoke. Sometimes the rains came. Sometimes they did not, and still, life went on. Families shared what little they had. Neighbors gave from their stores. Hunger pressed against them, but it did not break them. Floods, too, could come. When the rains returned with fury, rivers swelled beyond their banks. Fields disappeared beneath water. Homes were swept away, people rebuilt with patience. Walls of stone and clay rose again. Roofs of thatch were laid anew. The temple, built upon higher ground, stood firm, its stairways gleaming with rainwater. They read the floods not only as disaster, but as reminder of nature's strength, of humanity's smallness, of the balance that must always be kept. Beyond weather, there were other trials. The forest surrounding them was alive with beauty, but also with danger. Jaguars moved silently through the shadows. Snakes coiled in tall grass. Insects carried fevers that drained strength and life. Yet, instead of fearing the wild, the people learned to live with it. They respected its power, gave offerings to its spirits, and tread carefully through its depths. When illness struck, they turned to healers, women and men who knew the secrets of plants, the bark that soothed pain, the leaves that lowered fever, the roots that cleansed the body. Some were cured, some were not. And still, life continued, woven with both healing and loss. Struggles also came from within. Disputes arose over land, over food, over the right to speak for the gods. Sometimes voices rose in anger, sometimes hands too, but the temple was always there to restore balance. Offerings were made, apologies spoken, conflict settled beneath the watchful silence of stone, for they knew unity was their survival. Without it, no family, no community, no temple could stand. There were times, too, when the horizon darkened with strangers. Other groups moved across the land, seeking food, seeking territory, seeking safety. Sometimes they came as friends, offering trade, obsidian for maize, feathers for salt, stories for stories. Sometimes they came as rivals. The people stood watch. Men guarded the fields. Elders met with strangers, their words careful, their gestures deliberate. The temple became not only a place of worship, but a place of defense, its high steps a vantage point, its walls a gathering place in times of danger. Most days passed in peace. Some did not. And yet, the community endured, as communities always do, balancing between fear and hope, between caution and trust. We might imagine the weight of these struggles: a mother watching her child grow thin during drought, a father carrying stones to rebuild his house after flood, a healer sitting quietly beside the sick, unable to save them, a community gathering at the temple, torn between despair and faith. These struggles were heavy, but they were not the end. For every hardship was met with patience, with resilience, with the calm persistence of a people who understood that survival was not a gift. It was a practice, and always, the temple stood. It was their anchor in storms, their reminder that they were not alone, that they were part of something larger than themselves. Its stones had been lifted with effort, set with intention, consecrated with ritual. To abandon it would be to abandon their own story. So even in famine, even in flood, even in fear, they returned to it. To pray, to hope, to endure. When we look at its stones today, silent beneath the sky, we do not see the hunger, the floods, the illnesses, the conflicts. We see only walls. But in truth, each stone carries the memory of those struggles, the calloused hands that placed them, the prayers whispered over them, the determination to endure carved into the very foundation. In the gentle quiet of night, as the village lay sleeping, the temple kept its watch. Its shadow stretched across fields, across huts, across the beating hearts of those who built it. The people dreamed of rain returning, of children laughing, of harvests heavy with grain, of a tomorrow made possible by surviving today. The temple refuses to reveal its secrets, but in its silence it tells us this: the people who built it were not untouched by struggle. They lived beneath the weight of hunger, flood, illness, conflict, and yet they endured. Stone by stone, prayer by prayer, they wove resilience into their world. Resilience so strong that their temple still stands, long after their names are forgotten. As we walk among its ruins now, we can feel it, not just the grandeur, but the endurance. The struggles did not erase them. They shaped them. They gave depth to their unity, strength to their rituals, meaning to their temple. And in this way, their challenges were not only burdens, they were teachers. We have walked with them through hardship. We have seen how they bent, but did not break. Now we move toward another thread in their story, the quiet unfolding of creativity. The ways they learned, invented, and discovered. The gentle birth of knowledge that carried them forward. The temple was not born from chance. It rose from knowledge, layered, refined, handed down through countless hands. Knowledge that did not arrive all at once, but grew slowly, like vines climbing toward the sun. At first, there was stone. Unyielding, heavy, resistant, but stone could be shaped. The people learned which rocks split cleanly, which could be carved, which endured in rain and heat. They found harder stones to strike softer ones, shaping blades, chisels, and points. Bit by bit, they learned to coax form from stubborn matter. In these tools, we see the beginnings of innovation. Not inventions of sudden brilliance, but discoveries of patience, of countless hands trying, failing, trying again. A chipped blade here. A smoothed surface there. A wall that stood longer than before. Each success, however small, became a stepping stone. They learned not only of stone, but of earth. Clay gathered from riverbeds, soft at first, yielding to the hand, shaped into vessels, left to dry, hardened in fire. With clay, they stored water against drought. With clay, they cooked food more evenly. With clay, they made offerings to the gods, figurines, incense burners, small altars glowing in firelight. The temple itself was built not only of stone, but of this knowledge, walls sealed with clay, painted with pigments drawn from earth and plant. Fire, too, was their companion. It cooked their food, lit their nights, hardened their clay. It burned incense, carried prayers upward in curling smoke. They knew its moods, the gentle flame that warmed, the fierce blaze that destroyed. They learned to control it, to feed it, to keep it alive through the night. Perhaps at the temple's heart, fire burned without end. A sacred flame, tended carefully, never allowed to die. Symbol of life itself, fragile yet enduring. But their knowledge reached beyond tools and fire. They looked upward toward the sky. They saw the sun rise in the east and set in the west, the moon wax and wane, the stars shifting slowly across the heavens. Patterns emerged. The seasons repeated. Rains came after certain constellations appeared. Crops grew best when planted under particular moons, and so they marked the sky. Stone pillars aligned with the rising sun. Walls built to catch the solstice light. The temple itself perhaps oriented to stars or shadows, a calendar carved into architecture. In the sky, they saw not only gods, but guidance. A map for planting, for harvesting, for praying. This was knowledge woven into stone, the silent language of alignment. Direction and light, plants too, offered wisdom. In the forest, they learned which leaves healed, which roots nourished, which berries poisoned. They cultivated maize, beans, and squash, the three sisters, each supporting the other in soil, a partnership of growth. Through slow patience, they bred stronger seeds, taller stalks, more abundant harvests. Each meal carried the weight of generations of observation, experiment, and care. The temple's offerings were drawn from this knowledge, baskets of maize, woven garlands of flowers, pots of honey, cups of fermented drink. Knowledge was not stored in books or tablets. It was stored in memory, in story. In ritual, children watched their parents. Apprentices followed their elders. Priests chanted the same prayers year after year, each word carrying both sound and instruction. Knowledge flowed like water through the generations, sometimes clear, sometimes altered, always moving forward. And the temple itself became a vessel of memory. Every carving, every stairway, every hidden chamber, a repository of meaning. Not all of it survives. Much has been lost. But enough remains to remind us, this was not random labor. This was learned, practiced, perfected craft. We might imagine the builders at work, men hauling stones with ropes and wooden rollers, sweat gleaming on their skin. Women shaping clay into vessels, their hands steady, their movements practiced. Children watching, learning, eager to one day take their place. Priests overseeing, ensuring each stone was set with ceremony, each tool blessed, each act tied to meaning. This was not only construction, it was innovation, ritual, and community blended together. And yet innovation was not only practical, it was spiritual. The people learned not just how to survive, but how to connect. They discovered rhythms of drum and flute, melodies that stirred hearts. They painted walls with colors drawn from earth and insect, telling stories in pigment and line. They carved figures, gods, animals, ancestors, breathing life into stone. These creations were not mere decoration. They were ways of knowing, ways of making sense of the world, of placing themselves within it. The temple was the ultimate canvas for this creativity. Its stones sang not only of labor, but of imagination. When we walk its ruins now, we see fragments of this knowledge. A stair aligned with the rising sun, a carving of a jaguar, symbol of strength, a vessel unearthed once filled with grain, a broken figurine once carried in prayer. Each fragment is a whisper of innovation, a reminder that these people were not static, not unchanging. They were thinkers, experimenters, dreamers, and perhaps that is the temple's greatest secret. It refuses to reveal its exact purpose. It refuses to tell us every ritual, every prayer, but it reveals quietly the persistence of human curiosity. For what is knowledge if not curiosity turned to practice? What is innovation if not patience shaped into form? The temple stands because they sought answers, because they observed the stars, because they tested stone and fire, because they dreamed of permanence in a world of change. And though they are gone, their knowledge remains, silent in stone, waiting in shadow, lingering in the questions we still ask. As we look up at the stars as they once did, we sense their wonder. The same constellations they traced still gleam above us. The same sun still rises. The same moon still waxes and wanes. Their knowledge has become our knowledge. Their questions remain our questions, and so the temple, even in silence, continues to teach. We have seen how their hands shaped not only stone, but wisdom. How their patience gave rise to innovation, to beauty, to meaning. Now we step outward, beyond the temple's walls, to see how it fit within a greater world of other peoples, other forces, other mysteries. No temple exists in isolation. Even in silence, it speaks of connections, threads reaching beyond its walls, into forests, rivers, mountains, and skies. The temple that still stands before us was not only the heart of a village. It was a point in a vast web of life, culture, and movement. To understand it, we must widen our view. To the east, the forest stretched endlessly. A sea of green, alive with sound, the cry of parrots, the chatter of monkeys, the hum of insects. The people ventured into its depths with care, gathering fruit, hunting game, collecting wood. The forest was a place of both gift and caution. Its trees provided medicine, its rivers fish, its roots food. Yet it was also home to jaguar and snake, to storms that could topple trees and flood the lowlands. The temple rose at the edge of this vastness, as if in dialogue with it. A meeting place between the cultivated and the wild, between the human and the untamed. To the west, mountains lifted their stone backs into the sky. Their peaks caught the first light of dawn, glowing with fire. From them came obsidian, sharp and gleaming, shaped into blades and points. The mountains were not merely resource. They were sacred. Home of spirits, of ancestors, of forces greater than any one person. It is possible the temple itself was aligned with these mountains. Its walls turned toward peaks that held meaning. Its rituals performed in their shadow, and beyond. Rivers wound their silver paths across the land. They gave water to fields, routes for travel, corridors of trade. Canoes cut across their surfaces, carrying baskets of maize, bundles of cloth, stones shaped into tools, shells collected from distant shores. Through these rivers, the temple was connected to other communities, distant villages that spoke different tongues, yet shared the same sky, the same maize, the same rituals of life and death. For the people were not alone. Other groups lived across valleys, forests, plains. Sometimes they met in friendship. Strangers arrived with gifts, obsidian for food, feathers for salt, stories for silence. They shared meals, exchanged songs, told tales of ancestors and gods. Other times, meetings were cautious. Strangers meant competition, meant risk, but always they meant connection. Proof that their world was larger than their own fields and homes. Trade brought more than goods. It brought ideas, new ways of shaping tools, new designs for pottery, new symbols, new rituals, new stories. And so, knowledge flowed like rivers, carrying seeds of change from one temple to another, from one village to the next. Perhaps the builders of this temple saw carvings elsewhere and brought the patterns home. Perhaps they heard stories of gods unfamiliar and wove them into their own. Perhaps their own innovations spread outward, carried on the lips of travelers, etched into the stones of faraway shrines. Even the sky was part of this wider world. The people knew that the same sun that rose above them also rose for others, that the same constellations seen from their fields were mirrored above distant mountains. In the stars, they felt connected not only to their neighbors, but to all who looked upward. The temple, aligned to sun and shadow, was both local and cosmic, a bridge between earth and sky, between here and everywhere. And yet, the wider world was not always gentle. Drought could stretch across whole regions, affecting not only one community but many. Rival groups, pushed by hunger, might move into new lands, clashing with those already there. Storms sweeping across forests and plains could destroy villages far and near. The temple, in its endurance, became a point of stability. No matter what shifted in the world beyond, it remained. It was their anchor amid wider currents. We may wonder, did other temples rise in distant places at the same time? Did other peoples gather as they did around stone and fire, around ritual and prayer? The answer is yes. Across the world, at different horizons of history, communities lifted their hands to build. Temples in valleys, shrines on mountains, circles of stone aligned with the heavens. Though separated by distance, they were united by the same impulse, to mark the sacred, to honor the unseen, to carve permanence into a fleeting world. In this way, the temple that refuses to reveal its secrets was not alone. It was part of a great chorus of human striving. Each temple a voice, each stone a word, each ritual a breath carried upward. The wider world was not only a place of exchange and conflict, it was a shared stage upon which humanity played the same themes in countless variations. Today, when we stand before the temple's ruins, we do not see the rivers, the mountains, the distant villages. We see only stone, but if we listen, we can hear echoes of the wider world. The call of a bird that once flew overhead, the murmur of a river carrying goods and stories, the memory of strangers arriving with feathers and shells, the silent gaze of mountains watching as the temple rose. The temple refuses to reveal its secrets, but in its silence it reminds us that it was never alone. It belonged to a world vast and interconnected, a world of forest and mountain, river and sky, stranger and neighbor. Its walls stood not only for one village, but as part of a greater human story, an endless weaving of connections, stretching far beyond what the eye can see. As we step back from its stones, we see not just one structure, but a thread in a vast tapestry. The tapestry of nature, of trade, of shared humanity, a reminder that no life, no temple, no story stands apart. We have walked outward into the wider world. We have seen rivers, mountains, strangers, stars. Now we turn back inward. For the temple's true weight is not only in its connections, but in its legacy, the ways it continued to shape time, even long after its builders had gone. The people who built the temple are gone. Their voices no longer echo through the courtyards. Their fires no longer glow against the night. Their prayers no longer rise in smoke toward the sky, and yet the temple remains. Silent, enduring, unmoved by the passage of centuries. This is its legacy, a presence that outlived its makers. When the last hands laid the final stone, they could not have known how long it would stand. They could not have imagined the centuries of silence, the forests that would creep back, the winds and rains that would wear its walls. But they built not only for themselves. They built for the unseen future, for their children, for the gods, for time itself. Legacy is not only memory, it is continuity. When one generation left, another remained. And so, the temple became a bridge between them. Parents brought their children to its steps, teaching them to bow, to pray, to honor. The children grew and one day returned with children of their own. Each generation adding its voice, its footsteps, its prayers to the stone. The temple was not only a building, it was a rhythm, echoing across centuries. Even when the village changed, when houses shifted, when fields moved, when strangers came and went, the temple remained the center. It held steady as everything else shifted. It anchored identity, reminding the people of who they were, where they had come from, what they believed. And so, even as time carried them forward, they carried the temple with them, not only in body, But in soul, we must imagine the long span of centuries. Perhaps one day the rituals changed. The gods called upon were not the same. The offerings differed. The chants shifted in sound. But the temple absorbed it all, its stones unjudging, its silence patient. It was a vessel large enough to hold every transformation. This is legacy too, not only what is preserved, but what adapts. In time, the community itself may have faded. The fields left untended, the huts abandoned, the fires extinguished, and yet the temple endured. Travelers stumbled upon it, awed by its scale. Strangers paused in silence, sensing its power. New generations found it, claimed it, added their own stories to its walls. Even in abandonment, it lived on, its legacy unfolding not only for those who built it, but for all who came after. We can see this in how we stand before it now. We who know nothing of its builders' names, we who cannot fully read its carvings, we who wonder at its silence, and yet we feel something. A pull, a reverence, a stillness that humbles. This too is legacy. The ability to speak without words, to touch across centuries. The temple's legacy reaches further still. It is part of humanity's shared inheritance. Across the world, other temples rise: Egyptian pyramids, Mesopotamian ziggurats, Andean huacas, stone circles of distant isles. Different in form, yet alike in spirit, each whispers the same truth: that humans seek permanence, seek meaning, seek connection to the unseen. The temple that refuses to reveal its secrets stands among them. Another voice in the chorus of time. We might ask, what does this legacy mean for us? It reminds us that we too are builders of temples, not always of stone, but of memory, of culture, of meaning. The things we create endure beyond us. The words we speak, the tools we shape, the rituals we practice, they ripple outward, carried into futures we will never see. The temple is proof. Its builders are gone, and yet their work still touches us, still teaches us, still stirs questions in our hearts. The greatest legacy of the temple may not be its stones, but its silence. For in refusing to reveal its secrets, it invites us to imagine, to wonder, to lean closer, searching for answers. In mystery, it remains alive. It is not only an object of the past, but a living question, renewed each time a person stands before it, curious, humbled, reflective. And so, its legacy is not closed. It continues to unfold in every step we take toward it, in every word we speak about it, in every dream it inspires. It is both ancient and present, both silent and speaking, both past and future. As night falls, we see the temple beneath the stars. The same stars its builders once traced, the same constellations that guided their prayers. They are gone, but the temple endures, and through it, they endure too. This is the nature of legacy, not immortality, but echo. A voice carried through stone across centuries into the ears of strangers who still listen. We have seen the bonds of family. We have walked through their struggles. We have witnessed their innovations. We have stepped outward into their wider world. Now, as we near the end, we turn toward reflection. For in the temple's silence there is more than history, there is poetry, there is meditation, there is the reminder that we too are part of time's endless thread. The night is quiet, the air is still. The temple rests beneath the stars as it has for centuries. Its stones are cool now, touched by moonlight instead of sun. The carvings, faint in shadow, still carry their shapes, though their voices are hushed. The silence here is not empty. It is full of presence, full of memory, full of something that lingers beyond words. And we, standing here, feel it. A weight, a gentleness, a reminder that time is vast, and we are but brief visitors in its endless flow. In this stillness, we think of all who came before us. The builders who lifted each stone with patient strength, the priests who whispered prayers into the air, the families who knelt at its threshold seeking blessing, comfort, hope. They are gone, their breath long faded, but their presence is not lost. It lingers, woven into the temple's quiet fabric, every crack in the stone, every weathered surface, every shadow that falls against its walls. These are echoes of lives once lived. The temple refuses to reveal its secrets, and perhaps this is its greatest gift, for in its silence it does not close the story, it leaves it open, like an unfinished melody, inviting us to listen more closely, to dream more deeply. The unknown draws us near. The mystery humbles us. The unanswered questions remind us of the beauty of wonder itself. Not everything must be explained. Not everything must be solved. Some things are meant to remain like the night sky, vast, distant, untouchable, yet deeply felt. When we walk away, the temple does not follow. It stays, as it always has, waiting, watching, keeping its secrets. And yet we carry it with us. In our thoughts, in our memories, in the quiet way it teaches us to slow down, to listen, to reflect. The temple becomes not only a place on earth, but a place within us, a stillness, a silence, a reminder. Perhaps this is the purpose of such monuments. Not to speak, but to awaken listening. Not to answer, but to deepen questioning. Not to explain, but to remind us of our place in the great river of time. We are part of that river too. Our days will pass, our works will fade, our voices will quiet, but something may endure. A trace, a memory, a fragment that lingers long after we are gone, like the temple, silent, waiting, still standing. As we reflect, we feel the thread that connects us backwards, through the centuries, through forgotten generations, through builders whose names we do not know. That thread also stretches forward, into the future, toward those who will come long after us. Just as we wonder about the past, they will one day wonder about us. What did we build? What did we leave behind? What silences did we preserve for them to ponder? The temple reminds us that we too are a story unfolding. Not the first chapter, not the last, but one moment in the endless scroll of time. Listen now to the quiet around the temple. The wind sighs softly through the trees. The night birds call. The stars drift above in slow procession. It is a lullaby of the earth itself, a rhythm older than humanity, older than stone, older than memory. And the temple is folded into that rhythm as we are too. So we close our eyes. We breathe slowly. We let the centuries wash over us like waves. We feel ourselves dissolve into the endless chain of time. The builders, the worshippers, the wanderers, the travelers, all are here, together, in this silence. And we join them. For a moment there is no past, no future, only the present, only the quiet, only the temple beneath the stars. The temple does not reveal its secrets. It never has. It never will. But perhaps we no longer need them. For in its mystery, it has already given us something greater. It has given us perspective. It has given us stillness. It has given us wonder. We step back slowly, leaving it behind us. But in truth, we never leave. The temple remains within us, its silence echoing, its mystery alive, its presence unshaken. And as we drift into thought, into dream, into sleep, we know that the temple will still be there when we return, unmoved, unbroken, unrevealed, a companion across centuries, a reminder of the vastness of time, a whisper of the eternal. And so we end, as softly as we began, with the image of stone beneath starlight, with the hum of mystery, endless and gentle, with the reminder that history is not only what we know, but also what we cannot know, what we can only feel. The temple that refuses to reveal its secrets is still speaking, not in words but in silence. And if we listen, truly listen, we may hear it too. This is where the story fades, not into answers, but into stillness, into the calm of night, into the quiet flow of time, into the dream of history itself.